Now, before we begin, I have to hit on an old wise tale, an old fable, to endow you with some knowledge. And it's kind of the way and mentality that we are going about this in this research. I have to do everything budget on my channel. I do not make a lot of money. Most Americans do not make a lot of money. So there's this old wise tale, an old fable, and it's about a fox. And there's a fox, and he's craving grapes. He wants grapes so bad. And he's trying to climb a tree because the grapes are up in the tree. But no matter what he does, he tries building a ladder, he tries using his claws, he tries bribing people. The simple fact is, he cannot obtain those grapes. So eventually he gets tired and he says, they're probably soured anyways. Essentially what that means is somebody that rationalizes something that is too expensive for them to buy or something that they cannot obtain and then says, it probably sucks anyways. It's probably not as good as I thought it would be anyways. Um, I really thought that story was a good analogy for this. I cannot afford analog night vision. However, during the time in the military, I did have extensive training with PVS 14s, Gen 2 and Gen 3s, and we went to Fort Polk with it. I was a driving instructor for the night vision course and everything. I was one of those that, I had to sign off. I was over that, blah, blah, blah. So I have a lot of experience with analog night vision. But we're mainly talking about digital in this video, but we're going to hit on pros and cons for both. I just want to prepare you guys for that. Um, Dropping $1,000 on night vision goggles, 1,000 plus, is just not in most people's budget. Most people, especially in America, are 2 weeks away, like a good paycheck or a paycheck and a half away from poverty and homelessness. Almost no one nowadays has a savings, and I mean it's rough, but that's just how it is. But maybe dropping $500 on a mount, a Night Fox Prowl, or a MVG 10 or MVG 30, and a helmet, that might not be out of the park for most of you. So, just food for thought. That's the mentality that we're coming in at. I'm going to try my best not to picture the analog devices as sour grapes because I do have extensive experience with those. However, I do not currently own analog night vision devices. I just disclaimer right there. All right. All right, so night operations separate the prepared from the exposed under cover of darkness. Night vision devices, analog and digital, give you the upper hand. But tactics do matter. Are you moving? Are you staying put? The answer changes everything in this video. We break down moving versus static operations under night vision devices. We look into the infrared, what the infrared spectrum is, and how to look into it, how digital night vision works, and how your choice of gear can either work with you or against you. So some night vision basics. Before we dig into tactics, let's cover the gear. Analog night vision, typically Gen 2 or 3, uses light amplification through a photocathode and a phosphor screen. It's passive, fast, and highly sensitive to ambient light. So, guys, what that means is I have a script. I'm going to go in and out of it to just get my opinions from the research I've done. It's just amplifying the available light. However, digital does have an advantage over this later on, and I think it's going to be very interesting when you figure that out, and I'm able to teach that to you. So digital night vision, on the other hand, uses a CMOS sensor and onboard processing to replicate low light images. It can be cheaper and offers digital features like recording or zoom, but it has downgrades, or my apologies, downsides and lag in low light resolution. Static operations. Static operations Overwatch, observation posts, defensive positions are where night vision devices shine. You control your exposure, ambient light, and field of view under static conditions. On-screen graphics. Analog night vision devices pros. Static. Excellent low light performance. Instantaneous response time, no lag. Superior depth perception, especially with bino systems. Digital night vision pros. Static. Onboard recording for reconnaissance. Built-in IR illuminators for close observation. Higher resistance to blooming from bright lights. I also want to hit off here, guys. We're going to hit on this later. Digital night vision you can actually see in caves where there is no ambient light whatsoever, in rooms where there is no ambient light. For analog devices to even work, they have to have ambient light there in the first place. So if there's no full moon and you go into a cave, even in the entrance, you will not be able to see a thing. With digital night vision devices, you will be able to see just fine, either or, if you're emitting IR. Now, that poses the question, though, does the enemy have night vision capability? Because even if they can't amplify the ambient light that's already inside the cave, they can use the analog device to scan the entranceway for digital night vision or IR light at the cave entrance, which means that you're essentially, to the naked eye, be basically invisible over 50 meters, because there is a little red light emitter on most IR lights. However, to the naked eye, you're essentially invisible past like 50 meters, give or take, with no magnification. But if the analog devices are scanning the doorway or the entrance to the cave system, even though they can't amplify any light because it's not there, they can amplify the light that you're blasting out of your digital night vision device strapped to your head. It's basically a big spotlight strapped to your head. But we need to keep this in mind. When we talk night vision devices, you are invisible to the naked eye. So you're completely above a regular human or a regular animal. Just keep that in mind through this whole discussion. I really hope that made sense. It's really hard to explain this because there's just so much going on. It gets crazy, but bear with me. While analog systems excel in passively monitoring terrain, digital night vision devices can leverage their features for fixed security cameras, drone uplinks, or sentry monitoring, especially when paired with external IR sources. Digital night vision devices are more prone to saturation from unexpected flares or white light exposure. Keep that in mind. So essentially what that means is, if you're too close or if you're in a really thick bush or whatever, a thicket, real dense forest, and you're looking around and stuff, and you got your IR emitter blasting, not one, but 2 or 3 mode, there is a good chance that you're going to get a lot of splashback and it's going to blind you, if that makes sense. Moving operations. Movement under night vision devices is a different animal. You're dealing with terrain, navigation, depth perception challenges, and light management, all while staying silent and unseen. So if you didn't know, you have no depth perception with night vision. It's all kinds of jacked up. You have no depth perception with night vision. It's really not as good as what people make it out to be. If you don't have any night vision devices, I actually prefer being in a static position. I'm just going to go ahead and say that, because you can't really see like thorns or bars. You can't see really fine bushes. You can't see, twigs. It gives you blobs. No matter how good, you could have Gen 3 tubes, brand spanking new, and it's not as good as what everybody makes it out to be. It's fuzzy. When I was in the military, I got to be one of the instructors for the driver's course at night, and half the people, it seemed like half the soldiers there, they literally had splitting headaches because of the night vision. I always had splitting headaches with analog night vision. I don't know why. but that's just how it is. It wasn't the strap, it wasn't the mount, it wasn't none of that. It was just straight up the night vision itself would just give me splitting headaches. It seems like half the soldiers that I taught how to drive with the night vision on had like either splitting headaches, or when we talked depth perception was off, I mean, it was crazy. Another thing that I learned there is if you see a shadow in the road or in a trail, it's a hole. It's a big hole. Okay, it's not a shadow. If you see a shadow at night through NVGs, it's most likely a hole. And just little things like that. You're looking into a whole different world at night. You're trying to see, you're essentially giving yourself a superpower, but it's like a half-baked superpower. And I've probably pissed off a lot of people that spent 10,000 on, some tubes and stuff. But guys, this is just how it is. Static operations with night vision is the way to go for defensive purposes. But that's both digital and analog. However, if you're assaulting an objective with them, unless the enemy has no night vision capability whatsoever, then it's probably not a good idea. If they're just naked eye in it, then you might be all right, but you're going to move a lot slower. You're going to be a lot more clumsy. I don't care how much you practice. That's just how it's going to be. And, that poses risk for you. In my head, assaulting anything under night vision is just a dumb thing to do. I don't care how dire the situation is. I would rather gunfight all day than fight at night. Me personally. Now I know I'm going to get some haters in the comments. I know that's probably a hot take, but I'm speaking facts here. There's too many things that could go wrong. You're adding batteries into it. You're adding this and that, and it's just not a good idea. But anyways, let's keep going. So with the movement analog pros, no input lag, real-time vision, better battery life, superior clarity in starlight or overcast moonlight. Keyword: superior clarity in starlight or overcast moonlight. If there's not a full moon, if it's like a new moon and there's barely any moonlight, analog devices really suffer. It's hard to make out anything. That's why military commanders will plan assaults and raids and stuff and major night operations around the moon cycle, if you did not know that. Some cons would be, they're vulnerable to blooming from unexpected light. You blast a 70,000 lumen Cabela spotlight into some tubes, the dude's probably going to be blind for a while. I mean, that's just how that is. If you leave them out in the sunlight uncovered, there's a good chance it'll burn your $10,000 to $20,000 tubes. I mean, just straight up. And I keep saying 10 to 20,000, but even $3,000 is too damn much for night vision. That's ridiculous. Yeah, if you leave them out in the sun, they're gone. So that's something else. Digital pros, resilient to sudden light exposure, easy to integrate with helmets or weapon optics, and it's more affordable for team level distribution. You can get like a Knotfox Prowl or a NVG 30. It might be 10. It might be so either NVG 10 or NVG 30 for like 300, and then add the helmet setup. You can get a whole setup for like under $500. That will allow you to see at night and do static operations. And the Prowl and the VG10 also has IR 0 modes where there's no IR minutes, but they're scanning for IR light. And that is the best thing you could possibly have because it's still looking for IR light. However, it's not emitting. So it's kind of like analog in a way, but it doesn't amplify it as much. So some cons would be input lag under dynamic movement, poor performance in ultra low light without IR, lower resolution and contrast for spotting trip hazards or wires. All right, can't really disagree with that. I do know the Prowl has a software update that I put in mine, and depending on when this video comes out, I already have the review down. I'm not going to say my complete thoughts on it, but it's another discussion like this as well as the review, and it talks about that input lag. But there's a software, a new update you put in there, and then it uses AI to kind of help itself along and it's actually really smooth. So I mean, it's kind of crazy for like $270 to $300. You can have something like that. So in dynamic environments, bounding, patrolling, CQP analog is still king, but digital can hold its own in semi-urban zones with moderate ambient light and reliable IR sources. So tactics dictate tools. In a movement-heavy mission like reconnaissance, patrols, or raids, analog night vision devices paired with IR strobes, lasers, and white light discipline give you the edge. In static roles, perimeter defense, LPOPs, surveillance, digital night vision devices may suffice, especially when paired with IR floodlights or cameras. They're also more expendable in fixed roles. So, like I said, you might want to get a little crazy with it, but like IR solar lights, IR cameras up in the trees around your perimeter, stuff like that. It's talking about IR spotlights. I mean, if you had that and solar set up all the way around your defensive area, like your house or whatever, it would not matter if you had a digital device on your head. You wouldn't even have to run the IR to minutes mode, and they couldn't pinpoint your location. Now, that's getting kind of crazy, but that's just something to think about. Um, yeah. Practical field tips. Here's some hard-won lessons, whether you're analog or digital. Always test your gear under real-world conditions. Walk terrain during the day to identify hazards. Use IR chem lights or strobes for team navigation. Master manual focus. Autofocus on digital is unreliable under movement. Keep batteries fresh. Digital drains faster. It drains faster because think of digital like a camera that's processing the information, and analog, it just amplifies the light that's already there. It's just using the battery to amplify the light versus amplifying it and then being able to record and a bunch of other things. Digital night vision is essentially a digital camera that sees at night, and that'll come into play a little bit later. Let's finish this real quick. Layer gear, knots for navigation, thermal for detection. If you got thermals, thermal is king, straight up. So the hybrid future. The future of night ops is hybrid. New systems blend analog tubes with digital overlays, augmented reality data, and thermal fusion. These combine the strengths of both systems, but at a steep cost. Until then, train with what you've got, whether it glows green or flickers on a screen. It's not the device that wins the night, it's the operator. So I'm really glad, I kind of hit on that. Like I said, I got this script and everything. I'm just kind of reviewing it right now. Um, it really is the operator and the tactics. Me personally, if something ever kicked off, I'm not going to be outside at night. I'm going to be in a cave because that is the best thing to do, is just not be outside at night whatsoever. It's a dumb idea. I don't care how much money you have, how expensive your equipment is. Being outside at night in a war zone is a dumb idea. I'm not going to go too much into that. Excuse me, I'm not going to go too much into that because I have a whole video about that. But yeah, that's basically the premise. So I got a field checklist popping up, a couple diagrams. I'm going to try to link that in the description if I can figure that out. If not, then like I said, please bear with me. This is going to be a longer video. I got a lot of stuff to cover. So let's try to understand the infrared spectrum and how digital night vision sees it. So what is the infrared spectrum, the IR spectrum? The infrared spectrum is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, located just below visible red light in terms of the frequency. It's invisible to the human eye, but it can be detected by special sensors. So you look into the wavelengths, we call them bands, in the kind of, scientific geek era communications type deal. Um, but their wavelengths in microns is what they're measured in, or nanometers. So you got near IR, which is NIR. Then you got shortwave IR, You have mid-wave IR, long-wave IR, and then far IR. So LEDs, IR LEDs, lasers, and night vision, digital night vision, go towards the near IR. That's what kind of wavelengths they see and what kind of wavelengths they put off. So like the 800 nanometers or the 940 nanometers, that's typically the most common wavelength you will find out there in digital night vision devices. Then you got shortwave IR. That's a little bit more powerful. It's throwing some shade your way, so to speak. Surveillance and laser spotting is what that is used for. Then you have midwave IR. And now this is very interesting and something I did not figure out until I actually started doing research for this project. This midwave IR is actually thermal imaging. Yes, thermal imaging uses the IR spectrum. So if you think of it, a digital night vision device like the Nightfox Pro is in theory a low-grade thermal. Now it's not, because the difference in technology is just so vast. And I'm not saying you could use a digital night vision device as a thermal imaging device. However, guys, I just found that really cool. So the midwave IR is thermal imaging, and then the long wave IR is passive thermal detection. Now all these, we went from the lowest portion all the way to the highest in nanometers, and that is kind of how the infrared electromagnetic wavelength spectrum goes. Also, after long wave, I forgot, we have far IR, and that's scientific / industrial use only. There's not really anything that we can do crazy like with that yet as it comes to warfare. So like I said, most digital night vision devices operate in the near IR range, especially 850 nanometers and 940 nanometer wavelengths. So how does digital night vision see the infrared? Digital night vision devices don't amplify ambient light like analog tubes do. Instead, they use electronic sensors to detect and interpret light, including infrared. Like I said, it's like a digital camera. Think of it that way, guys. So core components is a CMOS or CCD sensor. So it's essentially a little microchip, and it just senses everything. It senses the image, it processes it, stuff like that. It's a CMOS chip or a CCD sensor, like a digital camera, but designed to detect near IR light. Then you got an IR pass filter, which can be removed or modified, allows IR wavelengths to reach the sensor. And then it goes to the IR illuminator. It can be built in or external. It emits invisible light, usually 850 to 940 nanometers, that bounces off objects and is picked up by the sensor. So that's what you're doing. It's literally just like a spotlight, but with IR light. You blast something with it, and then it'll reflect back, and that's how it can make the images it does. Digital signal processor translates raw sensor input into a visible image on an LCD screen. So there's a lot going on with these digital night vision devices. I know that a lot of people probably clicked off or had to pause it trying to take notes and stuff. And I'm not really expecting everybody here to have a very scientific knowledge of the infrared spectrum and how these devices truly work. I think it's very interesting, and it's really good to know and have a basic concept of how they work, and it can actually allow you to do creative stuff. We'll put it that way. Modifications and creative stuff to these devices because you 100% understand how they work. So, all right, so analog versus digital in IR detection. So like a feature like IR sensitivity, passive IR glow detection on analog can see active IR light from LEDs and lasers on digital. Do you need an IR illuminator? Is it needed for analog? Not usually, but you do need an IR illuminator for analog devices if there is no ambient light. For digital night vision, often yes, especially in total darkness, but like with the Prowl or the NVG30 or NVG10, it can amplify ambient light to a certain extent. Okay, which one of these digital night vision can see 850 nanometers? It has a slight glow visible to analog users, fully visible through digital screen. What about 940 nanometers? Now, if I can get an analog device to see this, or to borrow, or somebody to come out here and test this, is something I really want to test. It says when 940 nanometers, it's nearly invisible to the analog devices, so that would pretty much kick it in the nuts. I mean, honestly, like there would be no point in having analog at that point if that is true. What that just said, it basically said at 940 nanometers on the spectrum, analog night vision devices have a hard time detecting that. It's not invisible, but it's nearly invisible. With digital night vision devices, however, it is still visible, but it's a darker image. So that would be a really fun thing to test. I'm not 100% sure. All right, so practical implications in the field. Digital night vision devices can see in complete darkness if an IR source is present. Covert operations prefer 940 nanometers in the infrared wavelength as it's harder to detect by analog users or others with night vision. So like I said, that'd be something cool to test. Digital devices are vulnerable to overexposure if an IR source is too close or too bright. And many IR strobes, lasers, and illuminators are tuned to 850 nanometers for maximum visibility with digital systems. So that's like you're going like 200 or 300 meters out and you're just beaming. That 850 nanometers, you're just straight up beaming across the field like coyote hunting or something. Um, that's what that would be for, essentially. So the infrared spectrum is light you can't see, but digital night vision can. These devices detect reflected near IR light through electronic sensors and render it as a visible image. This makes them powerful in low or no light environments, especially with IR illumination. So that was pretty much the whole script. I know that was a lot of information. If you guys kept up with that, or at least understood half of what I said, I really appreciate it. It's a lot of information to push out, but it's something I've been doing a lot of night vision tests and a lot of things with night vision recently, and it's just one of them things. It really is a game changer, especially if you're going up against other guerrilla forces or people that don't know that you have night vision. It can definitely be an asset. Now, I do want to say though, and I can't stress this enough, if something ever kicked off and it was like a conventional war and citizens of your country or my country ever got stuck in the middle of it, I'm not going to be outside at night. I'm going to be in a cave or in a tunnel system. It's just not worth it. There's too many factors. One, you have thermals out there, and two, you forget one IR patch, you forget this or that, or you don't cover your illuminator. You've got an IR1 mode versus IR0 mode, the passive no emittance mode on certain digital night vision devices. You're going to get capped. And even with analog devices, that's a leg up from digital. However, there's a good chance you're going to get capped from thermal because thermal is just so powerful. And it's all going back to that infrared wavelength spectrum and how you can manipulate that. But the thing is, guys, I mean, do what you want, follow all local, state, federal laws, but if it ever kicked off, I'm not going to be outside at night. I'm going to be in a cave system or something at night. As soon as it starts to get dark, I'm going in a cave. I'm going in a basement, whatever. I'm not going to be out. I'm not going to have no lights on, no nothing. That's how it's going to be. That's my plan. I don't really talk. I don't do real talk on my plans a lot. If something ever happened, that's exactly what I'm going to do. There is no chance of survival being out at night in an urban area or even in a rural area at this point if something kicked off. That is, just stay inside your apartment, stay inside your house, go to your basement, have weapons trained on the door, and do security shifts or something, because at the daytime you hold a chance. At the day, in daytime, even the simplest dude holds a chance, no matter what opposition they're facing. But as soon as it gets dark, I mean, you look at thermal. Thermal's trumping tactics now, and like I said, I got a whole video about that, but it's coming out. But it's just crazy. That's my thoughts. Every night vision video I'll make about tactics, that's what I'm gonna say. So that doesn't mean we're not gonna test this equipment. Like I said, I don't know when this video is going to come out, but I've already recorded 3 or 4 digital night vision tests, already uploaded. I got videos all the way out to September, so be looking out for those if they haven't came out yet. And like, comment, subscribe. God bless y'all. Thank you guys so much for 1,000 subscribers. If you have any questions, I know this was a big one. It was a lot of information. If you have any questions, just type them down below, or any opinions, or do you have any experience? Have you seen digital night vision running 940 nanometers through analog like Gen 2 or Gen 3 tubes? That is the main question here from the script and everything. That was like, comment, subscribe, guys. Thank you so much for 1,000. God bless y'all. Au revoir. I'll be on. So I'll see you guys next time on the mountain.